1970, a terrified woman walked into a welfare office in California. She wasn't supposed to be there. For years, her husband had controlled nearly every aspect of her life. But that day, she finally escaped. And she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was a thin, frightened girl. At first glance, she looked no older than 7. But she wasn't 7. She was 13 years old. She could barely speak. She moved strangely. She avoided eye contact. And she seemed terrified of almost everything around her. Within hours, social workers realized they weren't looking at a child with a disability. They were looking at a child who had been hidden from the world. What they were about to uncover would become one of the most disturbing cases in modern psychology. The girl's name was Genie, and for most of her life, she had lived in a prison without bars. To understand what happened to Genie, you have to understand her father. By many accounts, he was deeply controlling, increasingly paranoid, and obsessed with isolation. He believed the world was dangerous. He distrusted other people. And over time, that fear turned into something much darker. When Genie was still a young child, he began separating her from the outside world. The curtains stayed closed. Visitors were kept away. Conversations became rare. Then the isolation became even more extreme. For years, Genie spent most of her days alone in a small room. While other children were learning to speak, play, and explore, Genie was growing up in silence. While other children were making friends, asking questions, and discovering the world, Genie was staring at the same walls day after day. Investigators later reported that she spent long periods restrained and unable to move freely. She was given almost no opportunity to interact with other people, almost no opportunity to learn language, almost no opportunity to simply be a child. Think about that for a moment. Everything you are today was shaped by human interaction. Every conversation, every lesson, every argument, every joke, every story. Without realizing it, your brain was being trained every single day. But Genie's brain was being deprived of the very experiences that help create a normal human life. Years passed, then more years. The outside world had no idea she existed. Neighbors didn't know. Strangers didn't know. Most people had never even seen her. It was as if she had disappeared while still alive. Then one day, everything changed. After years of abuse and control, Genie's mother finally found the courage to leave. She intended to seek help for her own vision problems. But when she entered that welfare office with Genie beside her, social workers immediately sensed that something was terribly wrong. The authorities were called. Doctors were called. Psychologists were called. And soon, the truth began to emerge. Genie wasn't just socially isolated. She had missed nearly her entire childhood. When doctors examined her, they were shocked. She was severely behind in development. She knew only a handful of words. She struggled to communicate even basic thoughts. Simple social behaviors that most children learn naturally seemed unfamiliar to her. The world that most of us take for granted felt completely new. For the first time in her life, Genie was free. And for the first time in her life, she began discovering what it meant to be human. She explored parks, played with toys, listened to conversations, observed other people, touched objects she had never seen before. Everything fascinated her. It was as if she was trying to absorb an entire childhood in just a few years. People around the world became captivated by her story, but psychologists were fascinated for another reason. Because hidden inside this tragedy was a scientific mystery. For decades, researchers had argued about a controversial idea. Some believed there is a critical period during childhood when the brain is especially prepared to learn language. Miss that window, they argued, and full language development may never happen. Now, they had a real-life case unlike anything they had ever seen. If Genie learned language normally, the theory might be wrong. If she couldn't, the theory might be right. The stakes were enormous. Researchers began working closely with her, and at first, the results seemed extraordinary. She learned new words, recognized objects, expressed emotions more clearly, made progress that many people thought was impossible. Hope began to grow. Maybe she would fully recover. Maybe the damage could be reversed. Maybe the human brain was more resilient than anyone imagined. But then, something unexpected happened. Although Genie learned many words, she struggled to develop complex grammar. She could communicate, she could express needs and feelings, but language never seemed to develop in the same way it does for most children. Years of effort produced progress, but not the breakthrough many had hoped for. And suddenly, a terrifying question emerged. Had part of her development been permanently lost? Had the years of silence changed her brain forever? Even today, scientists continue debating those questions. But the tragedy of Genie's story didn't end there. In some ways, it was only beginning. As media attention grew, disagreements between researchers also grew. Questions about funding, responsibility, and access to Genie created conflict. The child who had spent her early life being controlled by one person now found herself surrounded by adults arguing over her future. The line between helping her and studying her sometimes became painfully blurred. Then, public interest faded. Funding disappeared. Research programs ended, and the world slowly moved on. But Genie couldn't simply move on. The years that had been taken from her could never be returned. Today, her private life remains largely protected from public view, and perhaps that is for the best. Because beneath all the scientific papers, beneath all the debates, and beneath all the headlines, there was a little girl. A little girl who never got the childhood she deserved. Yet more than 50 years later, her story still forces us to confront a disturbing truth. We like to think that becoming human happens automatically, that if a child is fed and sheltered, everything else will somehow fall into place. But Genie's life revealed something far more profound. Human beings are built through connection, through conversation, through love, through attention, through thousands of moments so ordinary that we rarely notice them. And when those moments disappear, the consequences can be unimaginable. Genie spent 13 years trapped inside a room. But the most important question isn't what happened inside that room. It's what happened inside her mind. Because somewhere in those lost years lies a question that still haunts psychology today. How much of who you are was created by the people around you? And if your childhood had been different, would you still be the same person?